The young woman, rejected and exhausted, could barely stand. But when the Apache saw her there, alone with the child, something awakened, and what he did next made the neighbors back away. Subscribe to the channel and discover how a warrior's honor changed the destiny of those everyone had abandoned. The fence of Conceição's small property in the countryside of Minas Gerais was like a broken promise. Crooked stakes and loose wires that could barely contain the free-range chickens that escaped through the holes. A piece of red earth isolated on the road leading to Bom Jesus da Penha, far enough away that disapproving glances wouldn't reach her every day. The small plot of land she had inherited from her father was all that remained after the community expelled her from the life she knew. The comments had spread like wildfire when her belly began to grow without a husband by her side. "Shameless woman," the church ladies whispered at the church door. "Bad influence on our daughters," Father Antonio sentenced during Sunday Mass without saying her name, but with eyes fixed in her direction. Conceição kept her chin up, trembling hands holding the rosary, until she could no longer bear it and abandoned the wooden bench in the middle of the celebration. It was the last time she set foot in the church. Now, 6 months after little Tiago's birth, her life was reduced to the daily struggle for survival. The boy slept tied to her chest while she worked in the small garden she maintained behind the mud house. Her hands, once delicate when she worked as a seamstress in the city, were now calloused and cracked from working the land. The last summer storm had been merciless, knocking down part of the fence that protected her property from loose animals, and especially from invasive glances. She had no money to fix it, nor anyone to ask for help. The closest neighbors were precisely those who had turned their backs when she needed them most. The afternoon was already falling when Conceição noticed a figure standing by what remained of the entrance gate. A tall black man with sun-marked skin was observing the destroyed fence without making any move to approach. He wore simple clothes, carried tools tied to his waist, and had a serene countenance that contrasted with his imposing presence. Conceição pressed her son against her chest, suspicious. "What do you want here?" she asked, keeping her distance. The man didn't respond immediately. He merely pointed to the fallen fence and then to the tools he carried, in a simple gesture that required no words. "I can't pay you," she responded, her voice firm despite her fear. He shook his head negatively, as if that didn't matter. "I'm Damião," he finally said, his voice deep and calm. "I come from the Quilombo of Sapé. I saw that you need help." Conceição hesitated. She knew from a distance about the existence of the Quilombola community in the lands beyond the Jacaré River, but she had never had contact with anyone from there. They were as isolated as she was by choice or necessity. "Why would you help me?" she questioned, still suspicious. Damião observed little Tiago, who was squirming in the cloth that bound him to his mother's body. "Because no one should be without protection," he answered simply. After a moment of silence, she nodded with an almost imperceptible movement of her head. Without further words, Damião began to work. His hands moved with precision, straightening stakes, stretching wires, strengthening the structure that had given way. Conceição observed him from a distance while continuing her chores, feeding the chickens, hanging clothes on the improvised clothesline, preparing cornmeal mush on the wood stove. The afternoon advanced and the heat was punishing, but Damião didn't stop even to drink water. When he finally approached the house to wet his face in the basin that stood beside the wooden stand, Conceição offered him a ladle of fresh water from the clay pot. He accepted with a nod of thanks, drinking slowly while observing the precise movement with which she distributed corn to the birds, saving each grain like someone who knows the value of every little thing. "What's the boy's name?" asked Damião, breaking the silence. "Tiago," she answered without raising her eyes. "A strong name," he commented, returning the ladle. The work continued until the sun began to set, tinting the sky red. The fence was now firm, more resistant than it had ever been. Damião collected his tools while Conceição, with Tiago asleep in her arms, observed the final result. "Tomorrow I'll bring better wood to reinforce the entrance," he said, storing the hammer in his belt. Before she could respond, they heard the sound of horses approaching. 3 men appeared at the bend in the road, stopping when they spotted Damião. Conceição immediately recognized the landowner, Jerônimo Mendonça, owner of the neighboring lands and the most influential man in the region. By his side were his 2 henchmen, Tonho and Zeca, known for the brutality with which they treated the workers on the farm. "What is this black man doing here?" asked Geronimo, without greeting Conceição. The contempt in his voice was palpable. "I'm just fixing the fence," Damião responded calmly, showing no intimidation. "These lands will be mine soon," Geronimo declared, addressing Conceição. "A woman alone has no way to maintain a property. It's just a matter of time until you give up." His eyes ran over the newly repaired fence with visible displeasure. "And you, Quilombola, go back to your place. I don't want people of your kind circulating around here." Damião remained impassive, just holding the landowner's gaze. Conceição, in turn, felt her blood boil in her veins. "These lands are mine by right, Mr. Geronimo. I have the documents my father left." "Documents get lost, woman," replied the landowner with a malicious smile, "especially when you don't have a husband to defend what's yours." He adjusted his hat and pulled the reins of his horse. "I give you 3 days to consider my offer. It's little money, but it's better than nothing." And addressing Damião, "And you get out of here. I don't want problems with the Quilombolas." The 3 men moved away slowly, dust rising under the hooves of the horses. The silence that remained was as heavy as the storm clouds forming on the horizon. Tiago began to cry, as if he felt the tension in the air. "He won't give up," murmured Conceição, rocking her son. "He always wanted these lands. Now that I'm alone, he thinks it's the perfect opportunity." Damião observed the woman and child, his face an impenetrable mask. "I'll return tomorrow," he said simply. "And you won't be alone." Conceição wanted to ask what he intended to do, but the words didn't come out. She just nodded, watching him move away along the dirt path until he disappeared around the bend. When she entered the house, locking the simple door with the old wooden latch, a strange sensation invaded her, something between fear and hope. 3 days, she thought, looking at her son who had finally fallen asleep in her arms. Geronimo was not a man to go back on his threats. What could a solitary Quilombola do against the power of the landowner who had the law and the church on his side? However, as she lay down on the mat spread on the packed earth floor, Conceição allowed herself, for the first time in a long time, to fall asleep without the crushing weight of loneliness. The sun had barely risen when Conceição heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She rose with a start, her heart pounding. Tiago was still sleeping on the improvised mattress. Carefully, she approached the small window and pushed aside the cloth that served as a curtain. Damião was back, but he wasn't alone. 3 men and 2 women accompanied him, all carrying tools, seeds, and wood. Conceição opened the door, confused and apprehensive. "Good morning," Damião greeted simply. "I brought help from the Quilombo." Before she could respond, one of the women stepped forward. She was short, elderly, with white hair tied in a colorful scarf. "I'm Teresa, healer from Sape," she introduced herself with a surprisingly strong voice for someone of her age. "Damião told us about you and the boy, and about Geronimo Mendonça too." Her dark eyes examined Conceição from head to toe. "You're a warrior, but every warrior needs an army." Conceição felt her throat tighten. How long had it been since she had received a genuine gesture of solidarity? The Quilombolas spread out over the land with the naturalness of those who know the work of the earth. 2 men joined Damião to reinforce not only the fence, but to build a sturdy gate. The women, in turn, headed for the garden, examining the soil and plants with experienced eyes. "Your cassava is weak," commented Teresa. "You need to plant it in the right moon phase and strengthen the soil." Without waiting for a response, she opened a woven straw bag she carried with her, revealing diverse seeds and seedlings. Conceição just observed, carrying Tiago, who had just awakened. The sensation was strange, as if the small property, previously so silent, had gained life. Gradually, her initial mistrust gave way. Teresa approached the baby, asking permission with her eyes to examine him. "He's healthy, but needs strengthening," she diagnosed, passing her wrinkled fingers over the boy's face. "I'll leave herbs for a bath and a tea." Meanwhile, at the property boundary, Damião and the other men worked without rest. It wasn't just a fence they were building, but a true protective barrier. The new stakes were taller and more robust, fixed deeply in the soil. The gate, made with resistant trunks, now had a lock that could be secured from the inside. "Why are you doing this?" Conceição finally asked Damião when he approached to drink water. Her eyes sought to understand the motivation behind such generosity. "We know Geronimo," he answered. wiping the sweat from his forehead. For years, he's been trying to advance on our lands too. Many of our people work on his farm almost as slaves, without choice. What he does to you, he has done to others. He paused, looking toward the horizon where one could see in the distance the headquarters of the Mendonça farm. We resist together, or we fall alone. The day advanced, and the work didn't cease. At midday, they all shared a simple meal prepared by Teresa: cornmeal mush, flour, and a pumpkin stew with leaves that Conceição didn't recognize, but whose flavor surprised her. It was the first time in months that she ate something she hadn't prepared with her own hands. Tomorrow more people will come, Damião informed them as they ate. We need to strengthen everything before Geronimo's deadline ends. Conceição felt a shiver run down her spine. He won't accept this. He'll bring problems for you too. Teresa, who was listening to the conversation, let out a short, dry laugh. Girl, we've had problems since our ancestors set foot on this land. One more doesn't make a difference. Later, when the day's work was almost finished, Conceição spotted a familiar figure approaching on the road. It was Dona Sebastiana, the region's faith healer, respected by all, including the priest who pretended not to know about the people who sought her out in secret. Tall, black, with a slow and dignified walk, she carried her inseparable straw bag where she kept herbs, ribbons, and wooden saints. Conceição felt her heart tighten. Dona Sebastiana had been the only one who hadn't turned her back when her pregnancy was discovered, offering teas and advice discreetly. I see you have visitors, commented the healer as she approached, her eyes scanning the quilombolas who were working on the land. Her gaze stopped on Teresa, whom she greeted with a respectful nod that was returned in the same manner. News travels, continued Dona Sebastiana. In the village, they already know that the quilombolas are helping. Geronimo was at the store today, furious. Conceição paled. Is he going to move up the deadline? I don't know, child. But I didn't come alone. The healer made a gesture, and, to Conceição's surprise, 3 women appeared at the bend in the path. They were villagers, the widow Josefa, who sold sweets, Maria do Carmo, a midwife, and young Aparecida, who had lost her husband in the last flood. Each brought something: a pot of dulce de leche, a cloth bundle, a free-range chicken. Why? Stammered Conceição, confused. Dona Sebastiana smiled. Not everyone agrees with what they did to you, child. Many stay silent out of fear, but they feel the injustice in their hearts. The women approached timidly, offering their gifts with hesitant smiles and whispered words. For the boy to grow strong, said Josefa, handing over the sweet. It's little, but it's from the heart, murmured Aparecida, extending the bundle that contained a patchwork blanket. The scene attracted the attention of the quilombolas, who paused their work to observe. Damião approached, a half-smile on his lips. It seems we have more help, he commented. Dona Sebastiana turned to him with a serious expression. You'll need it. Geronimo went to the city today. They say he returned with papers and 2 men of the law. Damião's countenance hardened. How much time do we have? Maybe a day, no more than that. The healer placed her hand on Conceição's shoulder. Child, you must decide. You can leave these lands, go far away with the boy, or you can stay and fight, but the risk is great. Conceição looked around, at little Tiago playing in Teresa's lap, at the rebuilt fence, at the people who had come to her aid without asking for anything in return. Something changed in her gaze. This land was my father's, and before him my grandfather's. It's all I have to leave to my son. I won't abandon it. Damião nodded, satisfied. Then we have work to do. He turned to his companions from the Quilombo. We need more people, and we need to be ready. One of the men departed immediately, running down the road toward the Quilombo. The village women exchanged apprehensive glances, but none made a move to leave. We'll prepare food, decided Josefa, rolling up her sleeves. If more people are coming, they'll need to eat. While the women headed for the improvised kitchen, Damião led Conceição to a more distant point where they could talk without being overheard. Geronimo won't give up easily, he warned. He has influence, money, and armed men. I have the land documents, replied Conceição. My father left everything legalized. Papers can disappear, or others can appear in their place. Damião's gaze was intense. We need more than documents, we need to show strength. For a moment, Conceição felt fear, not just for herself, but for Tiago, for the village women who had risked helping her, for the quilombolas who were now involved in her struggle. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me. Damião held her gaze. It's not just for you, it's for all of us. Each piece of land that Geronimo takes is more power in his hands, more people he can exploit. If we don't stop him now, who will be next? Twilight was beginning to tint the sky when more people arrived from the Quilombo. Men, women, and even some young people, all bringing something: food, tools, blankets. In a few hours, Conceição's small property, previously so silent and solitary, transformed into a vibrant camp. Fires were lit, forming a circle around the house and fence. The smell of food spread in the air as pots bubbled over the flames. Children ran among the adults, and little Tiago, normally so quiet, babbled happily in the arms of whoever picked him up. When night fell completely, Dona Sebastiana gathered everyone in a circle around the main fire. From her bag, she took herbs that she threw into the flames, causing a fragrant smoke. For protection, she explained, while murmuring words that mixed Catholic prayers and ancestral chants. At her side, Teresa accompanied the ritual with her own style, more connected to African traditions. It was as if two worlds met at that moment, united by a common purpose. Conceição observed everything with a mixture of amazement and gratitude. A few weeks ago, she was alone against the world, carrying the weight of judgment and rejection. Now, in some inexplicable way, she had become the center of a resistance that went beyond her small personal struggle. Lying on her mat that night, with Tiago asleep beside her, Conceição couldn't sleep. Outside, the quilombolas took turns keeping watch. The fires kept burning as a symbol that they were no longer in the shadows. Fear still existed, but it was different now. No longer the paralyzing fear of loneliness, but the fear that precedes great changes. Her thoughts were interrupted by a light noise at the door. It was Damião. "May I come in?" he asked in a low voice. Conceição nodded, adjusting her simple dress. He sat at a respectful distance, his eyes fixed on the flames of the small wood stove that kept the house warm. "Tomorrow will be a difficult day," he finally said. "Geronimo will come with all his force." He paused as if choosing his words. "I want you to know that no matter what happens, you won't be alone anymore. Neither you nor your son." There was something in his voice, a promise that went beyond the words spoken. Conceição felt a lump in her throat. "Why do you care so much? You barely know me." Damião looked at little Tiago, who slept peacefully. "I know your struggle. That's enough." He extended his hand, lightly touching Conceição's fingers. "Sleep. Tomorrow you'll need strength." When he left, Conceição remained awake for some time longer, her fingers still warm where Damião had touched them. Outside, the voices of the quilombolas had diminished, but their presence was palpable, a human barrier against the approaching storm. Finally, she let herself be taken by fatigue, falling asleep with the certainty that for the first time since Tiago was born, she would not face the next day alone. The dawn brought with it a palpable tension that hung over the property like thick fog. Conceição was awakened by Tiago's crying, and upon opening her eyes found Teresa already by her side, ready to help with the baby. "It will be today," said the old healer without preamble, taking the boy in her arms with the familiarity of someone who has raised many children. He felt it in the air, like birds before a storm. Outside, the movement was intense. More people had arrived during the night. Now there were about 30 quilombolas preparing for the imminent confrontation. Some reinforced strategic points of the fence. Others sharpened tools that could serve as weapons if necessary. The village women had also returned, bringing more food and, surprisingly, news. "The priest is coming," informed Dona Sebastiana as soon as she spotted Conceição leaving the house. Along with some men from the city, Conceição's heart accelerated. Father Antonio, the same one who had publicly condemned her months before, was now heading to her property. What did that mean? Before she could process the information, Damião approached. There was something different about him, a natural authority he hadn't shown before. He now wore a leather vest over his simple shirt, and a necklace of wooden beads hung around his neck, a symbol of his position in the Quilombo. Conceição understood. "Father Antonio comes with two possible intentions," he explained, his calm voice contrasting with the agitation around them. "Either he comes to legitimize Geronimo's actions, or—" He left the phrase hanging in the air. "Or he realized he's on the wrong side this time." completed Donna Sebastiana, her wise eyes fixed on the road. Either way, we can't fully trust him. Damião nodded, turning to Conceição. Where are the land documents? Kept under a loose board, under my bed, she answered. I'll get them. No? Damião gently held her arm. It's better they stay hidden for now. If Geronimo comes with the law, we'll show them. If not... Again that pause loaded with meaning. The sun was already high when the first entourage approached by the road. It was Father Antonio, accompanied by the notary from the city, and 3 more men whom Conceição recognized as local merchants. All seemed uncomfortable as they approached the property, now protected by dozens of quilombolas. Teresa quickly took Tiago inside the house, while Conceição beside Damião advanced to receive the visitors. They stayed inside the fence, while the newcomers remained mounted on their horses outside. Good morning, Conceição, greeted the priest, avoiding her gaze. His thin, pale face displayed an expression difficult to decipher. I see you have company. They are my friends, Father, she responded with a firmness that surprised even herself. They came to help me protect what is mine by right. The notary, a fat man with a thick mustache, cleared his throat uncomfortably. Miss Conceição, we are here at the request of Mr. Geronimo Mendonça, who claims to have bought these lands from your late father before his, passing. Conceição felt her blood freeze in her veins. That's a lie. My father would never sell our lands, especially to Geronimo. I have the documents that prove I am the legitimate owner. Well, the notary rummaged in his folder. Mr. Mendonça presented a signed contract that indicates otherwise. As an officer of the law, I need to verify your documents to determine which is valid. It was a trap, Conceição realized immediately. If she showed her documents now, they could be contested or, worse, confiscated or destroyed. She looked at Damião, uncertain about how to proceed. Where is Geronimo? Asked Damião, stepping forward. If he claims these lands, he should be here personally. Father Antonio exchanged glances with the notary before responding. He will come soon. He asked us to verify the documents first, to avoid unnecessary confrontations. Interesting. Donna Sebastiana's voice sounded behind Conceição, firm and clear. The man who wants these lands so much doesn't come to claim them personally. The healer advanced, positioning herself beside Conceição. Father Antonio, you and I have served this community for more than 30 years. We know the truth in people's hearts. You know that José Ribeiro, Conceição's father, would never sell these lands to Geronimo Mendonça. There was enmity between them, since Geronimo tried to take the waters from the stream that passes through here. The mention of her father's name made Conceição straighten her posture. She remembered how many times she had seen him confront Geronimo, refusing to yield an inch of land or a drop of water from the stream that meandered through the back of the property, vital for his plantations. My father died protecting what was ours, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. And I won't dishonor his memory by surrendering everything now. The silence that followed was tense, interrupted only by the neighing of one of the horses. Father Antonio seemed increasingly uncomfortable, avoiding looking directly at Conceição or at the quilombolas who were approaching, forming a human barrier behind her. Miss, insisted the notary, visibly nervous, we need to see the documents to resolve this matter legally. If you refuse... If she refuses what? Damião's voice cut through the air like a blade. Will you use force against a woman with a small child? Against people who are just defending what is just? The notary swallowed hard, retreating slightly. It was then they heard the sound of more horses approaching. A larger group was coming down the road, Geronimo Mendonça in front, followed by at least 10 men armed with shotguns and machetes. Conceição felt a shiver run down her spine. The situation was about to get out of control. Damião quickly turned to the quilombolas, giving rapid instructions in a low voice. The village women, including Donna Sebastiana, formed a protective circle around Conceição, while the men positioned themselves strategically along the fence. When Geronimo arrived, his face was already red with fury at seeing the number of people protecting the property he coveted. He dismounted with an abrupt movement, advancing to the newly built gate. What is this? A rebellion? He vociferated, looking with contempt at the quilombolas. Step aside. These lands belong to me. Show the document that proves it, challenged Damião, placing himself directly face to face with the landowner, only the fence separating them. Geronimo made an irritated gesture to the notary, who quickly dismounted and approached, extending a yellowed paper. Here it is, purchase and sale contract signed by José Ribeiro 3 months before his death. Conceição felt her heart tighten. She knew her father's handwriting as well as her own. She needed to see that document. "Let me look," she asked, extending her trembling hand through the fence slats. The notary hesitated, looking at Geronimo, who nodded with a confident smile. "Of course, let the girl see what her father did. Maybe then she'll understand that she's fighting in vain." The paper passed from hand to hand until it reached Conceição. She examined it carefully, her heart pounding. The signature really seemed to be her father's, but there was something strange. Her eyes ran over the document, stopping at a crucial detail. The date. "This document is dated April 15th, she said, her voice gaining strength as certainty grew. "My father was hospitalized in Formiga on this date, fighting the fever that took him. He couldn't have signed anything." Donna Sebastiana approached, examining the paper. "It's true, I myself was with José in the hospital that day. He could barely speak, let alone sign documents." Geronimo's face contorted into an expression of fury and contempt. The word of a faith healer against an official document? Who will believe that? "I believe it." Father Antonio's voice surprised everyone. He dismounted from his horse, approaching the fence. "I visited José Ribeiro in the hospital daily during his illness. I gave him the last rites on the night of April 14th. The following morning he was unconscious." He looked directly at Geronimo, his countenance transformed. "This document is a forgery, Geronimo, and I can no longer remain silent in the face of your injustices." A murmur ran through the group. The men accompanying Geronimo exchanged uncertain glances. The notary visibly paled. "Father Antonio, you are making a very serious accusation against a respectable man in the community," he stammered. "I am aware of that," replied the priest, raising his chin, "and I am willing to testify wherever necessary, as are many others who know the truth about Geronimo Mendonça's methods." He turned to Conceição, his face marked by what seemed to be genuine remorse. "I ask forgiveness, daughter, for not having had the courage to defend you before. I let myself be swayed by prejudices and by the influence of powerful men." The priest's public confession caused a commotion among those present. The village women moved closer, some with tears in their eyes. The merchants who had come with the priest dismounted, visibly distancing themselves from Geronimo. Geronimo, realizing he was rapidly losing support, changed tactics. His face assumed a calculating expression as he assessed the situation. "Very well," he finally said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It seems there has been a misunderstanding with the documents. Perhaps we can resolve this another way." He looked directly at Conceição. "A woman alone, with a child to raise, it must be difficult. I can offer a good price for the land, enough money for you to start over somewhere else away from the gossip and judgments." Conceição felt her blood boil in her veins. "There isn't enough money in the world, Mr. Geronimo. This land is my inheritance and my son's inheritance. It is not for sale." Geronimo lost his composure. His face became a mask of hatred as he turned to his men. "Tear down this fence. Take the property by force. A woman without honor deserves neither respect nor property." Before anyone could move, Damião stepped forward, his voice thundering across the clearing. "Touch this fence, Geronimo Mendonça, and you will face not just the quilombolas of Sape, but all the justice you have avoided for years." At that moment, as if responding to an invisible signal, more people emerged from the sides of the property, dozens of quilombolas, many of whom Conceição recognized as workers from the region's farms. They now formed a complete circle around the property, united in silent determination. Geronimo visibly paled as he realized he was outnumbered. His men, perceiving the change in the situation, discreetly retreated, some even lowering their weapons. The notary, completely uncomfortable now, stored the forged document in his folder with trembling hands. "I believe there are legal questions that need to be clarified," he said, trying to maintain an official tone. "I suggest everyone remain calm while we properly investigate." "There is nothing to investigate," interrupted Father Antonio, his voice carrying a renewed authority. "These lands legitimately belong to Conceição Ribeiro, daughter of José Ribeiro. The document presented by Mr. Geronimo Mendonça is fraudulent, and I am willing to testify to that before any authority." He turned to Conceição, extending his hand over the fence. "Daughter, I ask you to show me your documents." not to question them, but so that everyone here can witness the truth. It was a moment of decision. Conceição looked at Damião, who subtly nodded. She looked at Dona Sebastiana, who did the same. With her heart pounding, she went to the house, returning moments later with a worn leather envelope. From it, she removed papers yellowed by time, but perfectly legible. The original deed to the property in her grandfather's name, the transfer to her father, and finally the will that left everything to her, with the recognized signatures of the previous notary, now deceased. Father Antonio examined the documents carefully, then showing them to the merchants who accompanied him. All nodded in silence. "These are the legitimate documents," the priest finally declared. "And as witnesses, we declare that we recognize Conceição Ribeiro's right to these lands." A heavy silence fell over the group. Geronimo, cornered, looked around like a trapped animal. His eyes rested on Conceição with such palpable hatred that she instinctively took a step back. "This doesn't end here," he growled, mounting his horse again with an abrupt movement. "Nobody challenges Geronimo Mendonça and goes unpunished." He looked at Damião with contempt, especially a black man who doesn't know his place. Damião held his gaze without hesitation. "My place is on the side of justice, Geronimo. Perhaps it's time for you to find yours." The words hung in the air like a sentence. Geronimo violently pulled the reins, making the horse rear up, and departed at a gallop, followed by his men, leaving only a cloud of dust behind. The silence that followed was broken by Tiago, who began to cry inside the house. Conceição ran inside, taking her son in her arms, rocking him while trying to control the trembling in her own hands. When she came out again, she found a scene she had never imagined. Father Antonio was chatting animatedly with Damião and other quilombolas, while Dona Sebastiana and Teresa exchanged knowledge about herbs and prayers. The village women distributed food to everyone, and the men began to dismantle the improvised barricades, transforming them into benches so everyone could sit and share the meal. "He will return," Damião said softly, approaching Conceição. "Men like Geronimo don't accept defeats." "I know," she replied, adjusting Tiago in her arms. "But when he returns, he won't find me alone." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a silent understanding, an unspoken promise. At that moment, under the strong midday sun, with dozens of people gathered on her small property, Conceição realized that the fence that had once isolated her from the world now delimited not a prison, but a new beginning. Today's battle was won, but the war against men like Geronimo would be long. However, for the first time in a long time, the future didn't seem like a threatening shadow, but a road illuminated by possibilities. Little Tiago, as if sensing the change in the air, stopped crying and smiled, a toothless smile that, at that instant, seemed to contain all the hope in the world. The fence of Conceição's property, once a symbol of isolation, had transformed into a constantly open portal through which visitors from the Quilombo and the village passed. Women brought their children to play with Tiago, sharing knowledge about plantations. Father Antonio had spoken openly at Mass about the community's error in judgment. Not everyone had changed their opinion, but Conceição no longer lowered her head. She walked erect, her gaze firm. Damião came almost daily. Sometimes he brought seeds for the garden. Other times he just talked with Conceição while she performed her tasks. On a hot afternoon while they were repairing the roof, Damião finally asked about Tiago's father. "He was a traveling salesman," she answered, her voice low. "He arrived in the village with his merchandise and beautiful promises. When he learned I was expecting a child, he left that same night." Damião listened in silence. "Tiago is a lucky boy," he finally said. "He has a mother who defends him like a lioness." A smile illuminated Conceição's face, "and he has a godfather who does the same." That same day, Dona Sebastiana arrived hurriedly. "Geronimo has brought gunmen," she announced. 5, maybe more. They're staying at the farm." Conceição felt her heart tighten. "What can we do?" she asked, looking for Tiago. "We need to be prepared," replied Damião. "I'll talk to the men from the Quilombo." That night, Damião returned with 20 quilombolas, all carrying bundles, tools, and some even their children. "We decided it's better for us all to be together," he explained. "Geronimo knows the Quilombo. He could attack there first." One of the men entered carrying weapons, old shotguns, sharpened machetes, and an old revolver. "We don't want to use them," explained Damião, "but we need to show that we can if necessary." By dawn, the property had transformed into a fortress. Soon they spotted a cloud of dust on the road. Geronimo was in front, followed by 10 gunmen. Behind them, to everyone's surprise, came Father Antonio, the notary, and several people from the village. "So that's how it is," vociferated Geronimo upon seeing the quilombolas. "You gathered your band of runaway blacks to protect the land that belongs to me." "This land belongs to Conceição Ribeiro," replied Damião calmly, "and we are not runaways. We are free." One of the gunmen stepped forward, hand on his revolver. "Boss, give the order and we'll clear this land in 5 minutes." "There will be no blood spilled here today," intervened Father Antonio, "not from one side nor the other." He removed an envelope from his pocket. "The truth is here, in the documents that confirm José Ribeiro was hospitalized on the date he supposedly sold you these lands." The notary stepped forward. "An official investigation has been opened into the authenticity of the document presented by Mr. Mendonça. Until it concludes, the property remains in Conceição Ribeiro's name." Geronimo paled. "You don't understand? It's not about documents. It's about who has power in this region." He turned to his men. "Advance. Take this land." At this moment, the people from the village positioned themselves beside the priest, forming a human barrier between the gunmen and the fence. "If you want to kill someone, Geronimo, start with your own neighbors," said Josefa, the widow. "Enough of injustice." The gunmen hesitated. Killing quilombolas was one thing. Massacring an entire village, including the priest, was something completely different. "You're finished, Geronimo," said Father Antonio. "The governor will receive a complete report about your activities." Geronimo looked around, seeing himself surrounded not by weapons but by the collective determination of people who had decided to no longer be afraid. "You will regret this," he muttered, retreating. He mounted his horse and departed at a gallop. 3 months passed. The property transformed completely. New houses were built, plantations expanded. 5 quilombola families had decided to stay permanently. The village women came regularly to participate in collective activities. The priest celebrated monthly masses under the mango tree. Other small properties, also threatened by Geronimo, began to organize in a similar way. One afternoon, Damião returned from a trip to the provincial capital. "Geronimo has been arrested," he announced, "accused of forging documents. The lands he took will be returned to their rightful owners." Conceição felt an enormous weight being lifted from her shoulders. "It's over then?" Damião smiled. "This battle, yes, but there are many others ahead." He looked at the houses, the plantations, the people working together. "What we've built here is just the beginning." Tiago, spotting Damião, ran clumsily in his direction. "Father, father." The sound of that word made them both freeze. Damião looked at Conceição, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded. "If you want to be." "I want to," he responded simply. "I want to be a father, a companion, a protector, whatever you and Tiago need." That night, observing the community gathered around the fires, Conceição felt her heart overflowing. The fence that had once isolated her from the world was now just a marking of the space where a new way of living was being built, based on mutual respect and solidarity. Tiago slept in her arms, the serene expression of someone who feels completely secure. And Conceição knew that they had found the true meaning of home, not a physical place delimited by fences, but a space in the heart where everyone could belong. If you were moved by this journey of unity and courage, share your impressions in the comments. Stories like this remind us of the power of solidarity in the face of injustice. Subscribe to the channel for more narratives that celebrate the strength of the human spirit, and leave your like to spread this message of hope together.